not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today revolves around the very famous no confidence motion, which is to be brought to Parliament in 2 days from now. Tonight, we'll try to find answers to several questions, including what is the impact of the no confidence motion on the political landscape in Sri Lanka, the future of the UNP if the vote of no confidence is passed or failed, the future of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party as well as the UNP coalition government, and what action would the Tamil National Alliance, Sri Lanka Freedom Party, JHU and the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress take as far as the no confidence motion is concerned. Now, to find answers to these questions and more, we've invited three eminent personalities to the studios as usual. Joining us this evening is Dr. Pratibha Mahanameheva, former Commissioner of the Sri Lanka Human Rights Commission. Nice to have you on board. Also joining us this evening is Krishmal Varanasuri, attorney at law. And also joining us this evening is the very famous Professor Rajiv Vijayasinghe, former Member of Parliament. Also was the leader of the Liberal Party of Sri Lanka as well at one point. So let's start off tonight's show with Krishmal Varanasuri, attorney at law. Krishmal, right now, the no confidence motion is the most talked about topic in Sri Lanka at present. In your opinion, what's going to happen on the 4th of April 2018 when this is taken up for vote?
Yeah, thanks, Shamir, once again for inviting us to your August Assembly. I may be unpopular with all of you for saying this in answer to your question. Frankly, my question is, why are people talking about this no confidence motion so much? Because number one, is one particular personality or person so important to the rest of the country for us to be dedicating all our extra time in talking about this nonsense? And number two, whether it passes or whether it fails, what is it going to give the people? One, if the present Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Wickramasinghe, gets through this no confidence motion, is that going to make our country an absolutely brighter rainbow nation that we didn't have in the past so many years, suddenly in the next 1.5 years? And if he fails, and if the no confidence motion passes, who are we going to have as a new Prime Minister? Is that new person going to usher us that new tomorrow that all of us have been waiting for, which I have now actually started believing is El Dorado or utopia, as to what the people will get with a new face? So my question is, will your taxes that are now suddenly increased, will it be paid better because a new Prime Minister comes in tomorrow, or whether the old person stays back in office, will it be changed? Whether you and I, some people who are not as fortunate as some of us may be, who have to do not one job but two, just to make ends meet, to bring the bacon home, as they say. Will your suddenly the school fees that you have to pay for your children, or the van fees that you have to afford, or the transport system that miraculously will it transform suddenly because the no confidence motion passes or fails? These are questions that the people of this country must answer without all of us running lock, stock and barrel behind one no confidence motion, which is not going to alleviate the problems of this country. We as a people need to think of how do we usher back our sovereign power that we have vested in these three institutions of government to govern us. Are those powers being utilized in our favor? Yes, the no confidence motion to that extent, I say opens out an excellent avenue for His Excellency the President. Because remember, if the no confidence motion passes and if they win it, that would mean immediately that the so-called national government that they have, which I have previously argued, in my opinion, in terms of the constitution, is not a national government, because it has only part of another party, but not the entire party. Therefore, it's constitutionally, in my opinion, an unlawful national government, if at all it is any government. So now it will open up an avenue for His Excellency the President to limit the number of ministers to 30, as the 19th Amendment demands, because there will be no more national government. And finally, the people will at least reduce the cost and expenditure that we spend on the umpteen numbers of ministers running up and down in their Land Cruisers and Prados, and going for their overseas tamashas and their parties, spending our tax money that now they have increased. At least that will save some money if this no confidence motion goes through, because the excellence president will have to limit the cabinet to 30 and go with the government.
Krishmal, don't you think that bringing the no confidence motion itself is about the bond scam that took place in Sri Lanka? And we've spoken about this over and over again on this very show, Face the Nation. Don't you think that this is a time where the parliament can show its power to oust a prime minister who has not done his job?
Shamir, take it on face value. The no confidence motion in numbers, Roman numericals 1 to 13 have several faults against the Prime Minister for the so-called bond scam, and number 14 is about law and order ministry. And at the end of it, they qualified by saying, we have no confidence in the government of which this Prime Minister is a Prime Minister. And that's how they have brought the no confidence motion within the rule of the rule of the Constitution. No confidence motion against the Parliament in terms of Article, I think, 48. I can look that up. So, yes, it has, but are you or are your viewers of that naive opinion that these parliamentarians will try to clean up the act and get this corrupt Prime Minister out for the benefit of the people? If the people are of that naive opinion, yes, I'll agree with you. But if the people think that this is just a change of face...
We must start somewhere, isn't it, Krishmal?
Sorry?
We must start somewhere.
We must start somewhere. That is why I said, let's not talk about cleaning up a corrupt man, because in my opinion, several of them are corrupt inside. And they're only interested in protecting their office of ministers and staying in a jumbo cabinet so that they can get their perks. But yes, this will at least open the way for the 19th Amendment to operate with a number of ministers limited to 30. And that way at least we will be able to go for the next 1.5 years, at least start thinking of what we assured the people in 2015, by way of which this present so-called government came to assume power.
Thank you very much, Krishmal Varansuri, attorney at law. I now move my attention to Professor Rajiv Vijayasinghe, former member of parliament as well as the former leader of the Liberal Party of Sri Lanka. Now the question mark is, what is the TNA going to do? We know that the UNP has 105 seats in parliament and they're quite comfortable with that number at the moment. And based on the constitution of Sri Lanka, you just need a simple majority in parliament to get the no confidence motion passed or defeated. Now, Professor Vijayasinghe, you've been a parliamentarian for some time now. In your opinion, what would be the actions of the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress, the Tamil National Alliance, the Jathikelu Rumaya, who are somewhat supporters of the UNP and its principles? What action would they take on the 4th of April? And who would they support the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna sponsored no confidence motion? The time starts now.
Well, I think very clearly all these parties will do what is in their own interests. And I think it would be very naive to think that most parliamentarians are concerned about ideals. I think we have seen just a very few in the past few weeks. You know, outstanding Vasanta Senanayaka, who said very clearly to the UNP, this man must go, and I stood by it. Unlike Harsha De Silva, who said very clearly, even on TV, this man must go, and then he was pulled up by his masters, ran back saying, no, I didn't really mean that. So you have conners, but you also have some very honorable people. How many, I don't know, but at least we have one around. I think there are some others who are not perhaps so brave or so outspoken, but who haven't talked nonsense. I think that is what is relevant within the UNP. They haven't talked nonsense like, you know, the Harshas or the Ajit Pereiras. But now let us look at these other parties you mentioned, which your question was. Why did they join this coalition? They joined because they felt they were not getting very much out of President Rajapaksa. Amongst them, I think you do have an idealist, Reverend Ratana. He tends to fly off the handle, but I think he's a very, you know, honorable human being, one of the best MPs we have, a bit not logical sometimes, but I think he has made his position also very clear. But with regard to some others in the JHU, while on the one hand they had certain things they wanted to carry forward, they also had their own ambitions. They also, as Krishmal said, they wanted to stay in power and to become ministers. And because Rajapaksa cut their wings earlier, they decided to expand where their wings could be spread. But I think the way Ranil Wickremesinghe trapped Champika Ranawaka was really quite brilliant. You know, he's now trapped within the UNP. And I don't think he will be quite as brave as Ratana, but he also knows that it might be the end of the road for him soon.
He trapped a lot of MPs. Let's talk about Field
Rajita
Marshal Sarath
Senaratne.
Fonseca.
Sorry?
Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca, who was...
Oh, he didn't trap Sarath Fonseca. Sarath Fonseca trapped him. After all, don't forget, Sarath Fonseca stood on his own and has actually been put into parliament in total violation of the constitution. It's a complete joke. I think Sarath has got what he wants. And don't forget, Sarath is not going to give in to Ranil as easily as Ranil has to give in to Sarath. The Muslim Congress, same. As you all know perfectly well, Ranil Wickremesinghe told me on Christmas Day 2014 I had to go see Rauf Hakim was demanding 2 million to cross over. Now whether he gave it to him, whether Rauf was doing that, I don't know.
As I always say, you need to take responsibility for the statements that
and
you
you
make.
know I do, Shamir,
Yes.
you know I do.
I need to mention that very clearly, articulate that very clearly.
Yes. If you're frightened, if you're another coward, I can't help it. But you know perfectly well, I always say what is true, and I stand by it. And I've written about it. Rauf also now knows that it's coming to the end of the road. So he will have to decide very quickly what he's going to do. Some of my Muslim students in the southeast said, your friend Mr. Hakim is going to bite the dust. Your most interesting question was the TNA. And the short answer is I think the TNA is very confused because I think they have now realized that anything they can get from Ranil Wickremesinghe is no longer possible whether he survives the no confidence motion or not. Because he is, to use Govind Asiri's famous, very, very familiar words, a dead duck.
Professor Vijay Singha, what's going to happen on Wednesday, on Thursday, when the no confidence motion is brought up? Do you think that it will go through, given the fact that the UNP has 107 members currently, minus the speaker, they have 106 members. And do you think this will go through on Thursday?
Well, let me say I was abroad until yesterday. I think reading the newspapers that I could on the internet, there's such confusion, everyone saying such very different things. But the bottom line is that while it's claimed that the no confidence motion is about the bond scam by you, the reason for the no confidence motion is very clearly the country showed on February 10th it has no confidence whatsoever in the Prime Minister. And that is absolutely patently clear. And members of Parliament have got to think of the short term and the long term. And if they continue to support somebody who is dragging the government and the country down day by day, they also will be dragged down. A few people will obviously take their money and run. But I think the vast majority of people have begun to realize that if they end up, I'm talking of the UNP now, supporting him, there's going to be no future for that party because we know the reforms he has promised over the years never happened. And if he gets through this vote on 2 days' time, on April 5th we'll be told that Sajid Premadasa will be declared leader of the party in 2020.
Thank you very much.
That's the sort of way Ranil acts. And I think the UNP has got to realize this is their one hope of surviving.
Thank you very much, Professor Rajiv Vijay Singha, former Member of Parliament. We of course would ask Professor Vijay Singha about the future of the UNP as well as the Sri Lanka Freedom Party coalition government if the no confidence motion goes through, and if it fails, what's going to happen next. I'm now moving my attention to Dr. Pratibha Mahanameheva, former commissioner of the Sri Lanka Human Rights Commission. He was a one-time commissioner of the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka. There are a few commissioners and he was one of them. Dr. Mahanameheva, what is your take on this? We heard President Maithripala Sirisena mentioning a few weeks ago that there would be a cabinet reshuffle again after the UNP ministers were switched back and forth. But we did not see that reshuffle. But we see a no confidence motion being brought in. Do you think that the coalition government would survive even if the no confidence motion does not go through?
Shamir, the president is the only person today in a tremendous pressure because a lot of opinions, a lot of other arguments are coming in front of him. But still, he is the executive president. But the main issue, not only in Sri Lanka, my main argument, the trust and confidence already breached by the whole government. Cannot blame Ranil only because the bond scam issue, who appointed Arjuna Mahendran? Appointed by President. You can't only put the blame to Mr. Wickremesinghe and escape with that. The whole government, there is no trust and confidence, not only in Sri Lanka, internationally.
But that time, Ranil Wickremesinghe was the head of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
He was on the Bank of Sri Lanka. Who appointed? Who appointed? Central Bank governor.
Once a recommendation is being brought by the Prime Minister.
Recommendation is there and appointed by Honorable President. So he also has to take part that. He can't just cover it up. No, I never did that. Then he could have removed him. No,
he did.
It took long time. Even many ministers were against. Let me explain first, right? Thereafter you can ask any question. My argument is this. The whole government, including President, there is no trust and confidence for the whole world. 2015 February 5th, the President went to India, and up to now, how many foreign trips? Whether this government was really expected lot of investment. Have we got that? No. Let me explain all these things, right? Up to now, how many foreign trips? Japan, Germany, lot of countries. Please explain how many investors visited in Sri Lanka? Nothing. Because this national government is only for a time period where we need it. And also, still the national government is existing. And also, this agreement. Now, it's a verbal agreement. And also, as you asked, President failed to reshuffle the SLV ministers. Why is that? Because all these are survival games, Shamir. I have no trust with this confidence, no confidence and other things. But the people have actually learned a lesson last time. And after the 100 days program only, I lost my confidence with regard to the whole government. Now, the creation, 13 charges, you can't level only one. There are some ministers, their president is there. Everyone has to collaborate. If it is a national government, you have to take one part, the other party has to take one part.
But don't you think, Dr. Mahana Meheva, it's a pity that you have the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, so many members of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna are riddled with corruption. We know the names of Vimal Weerawansa, who gave houses to his
so take
cousins.
Action. Take action.
Mahinda Daludgamage.
I mean, take action. So how many years gone? You are just talking only. 3 years gone.
No, isn't it a pity that it's these members who are taking
that's why this government came to power. What is this good governance? Is it actually happening in every place? The country day by day going down, and also the people who are trusting the government, now they join with Podujana Peramuna. See how many these Pradesh Sabhas they join continuously because they need their future.
Because during the tenure of the former regime, Dr. Mahana Meheva, you would agree.
Former regime, there were problems.
My question is very simple. My question is, during the former regime, many no-confidence motion was given to Chamal Rajapaksa, who was the speaker then. And the speaker himself did not take these up for debate at that point. And however, now at least the speaker is taking action against at least his leader, who is Ranil Wickremesinghe, which is, isn't this a democratic practice? Let's put everything aside.
This is a Cold War. This is a game of money. This is a game of money. Kingsbury Hotel, what happened? How much they offer for one minister? How much they offer for one opposition member? So, you think he tried to take action, but on the other way around, where are the good governance policies? Is it actually deal with cash? Are you going to compromise this non-confident motion with cash? Do you agree with that? As Professor said, this is where the reality you have to understand. They did a lot of mistake. I agree with your point. But you have to take action. If you are failure to take action, last moment you have to come out the Judicature Act amendment, and that also problematic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pratibha Mahana Meheva, former Commissioner of the Sri Lanka Human Rights Commission. He is also an attorney at law. I now move my attention to our second round. I open the floor for questions from my journalists. On to my immediate left is Nadim Majid, and then we have Charita Fernando, and on to my far left is also an attorney at law, Sonali Wanagabaduke. So let's start off tonight's show with Sonali.
Thank you, Shamir. Mr. Krishmal Varnasurya, now the common definition of a motion or a vote of no confidence is where a person who is in a position of power and responsibility is no longer deemed fit to hold that position, either because that person is ill-equipped or inadequate or failing to carry out his responsibilities or making detrimental decisions. Now, when we look to the Constitution for guidance, there's Article 42(4) which says, the President shall appoint as Prime Minister the Member of Parliament Parliament who, in the President's opinion, is most likely to command the confidence of Parliament. But over and beyond this guideline that the Constitution offers, what can we, where can we look to find the guidance with regard to a vote of confidence motion or a no confidence motion? I'd like to also juxtapose that with the position in Japan, where Article 69 of the Constitution says that if the House of Representatives passes a non-confidence resolution or rejects a confidence resolution, the Cabinet shall resign en masse unless the House of Representatives is dissolved within 10 days. So there is specific provision given there in Japan, but in Sri Lanka, it's rather vague. So can you elucidate that for us?
Good question, Sunai. Spoken like a true young lawyer. We have similar provision. We have similar provision in promulgating the 19th Amendment. Let me start with the word that you used at Article 42.4, which is that the Excellency President appoints a person who commands the confidence of Parliament. Now you compare that provision with Article 48.2, where that confidence is placed in peril under 48.2, where the Parliament passes a vote of no confidence. No confidence. So the President appoints one who he thinks commands the confidence of Parliament as Prime Minister. When a vote of no confidence is passed on the government, what happens? The Cabinet shall stand dissolved. Now, a smart journalist like you will then ask me the next question, but this is not a no confidence on the government, this is on the Prime Minister. Now, Article 48.1 kicks in there. That the similar provision to the Japanese Constitution, I'll take you to in a minute. On the Prime Minister ceasing to hold office by death, which hasn't happened, resignation which hasn't happened, or otherwise. So that, as you know, law presumes that the words are not put into any legislation without any meaning. People don't just go around putting words in this because they have nothing else to do. Every word must have a meaning, be taken as a word and taken as a whole. Now, or otherwise. So the Constitution contemplates the Honorable Prime Minister's office being vacant otherwise, by death, resignation or otherwise. So this counters all this present discussion that's going around the society, saying that if the Prime Minister ceases to hold office, the government will fall, the state will become stateless, arajika tattvayak ඇති වෙනවා. All that is absolute nonsense. The Constitution very clearly provides provisions where the Prime Minister's office can fall vacant and he is removed from office. Right? Now when that happens, 48.1 happens, then what happens? If it is except during a period intervening between dissolution of Parliament, that's a similar Japanese provision that you, if it is now, we are not in such a period now, then what happens? The Cabinet of Ministers shall, unless the President has in the exercise of his powers, that is, he dissolved Parliament, stand dissolved. So when the Prime Minister is removed as the death, resignation or otherwise, the Cabinet of Ministers stands dissolved. Now, how has this no confidence motion been drafted? Saying, giving, as I said earlier, 13 Roman numericals about central bank issue, 14 about law and order, then says, we have no confidence in the government of which this Prime Minister is the Prime Minister. And that then goes to 48.2, there is a motion of no confidence. Once that is passed, the Cabinet is dissolved, then the Constitution requires His Excellency the President to fall back on 42.4 and appoint a person who he thinks now commands the confidence of Parliament. When you consider this, remember these two terms, which are very loosely used in our present context everywhere in the country, Sonali. Governments fall and are established. State is permanent. Rajya Asthavar Bhavyak ඇති වෙන්නේ නැහැ. The state is permanent. The state continues. The state is us. Sovereign power of the citizens make up the state, and that is given to three institutions. Governments are established by a majority power, and if that majority power changes or a vote of no confidence comes, that government is changed, a new government instead.
Right. Thank you very much. Dr. Rajiva Vijayasinghe, this brand of divisive name-calling politics, which has become an inherent aspect of Sri Lanka as we know it, has now had to put economic development and progress and the welfare of the country on the back burner. In terms of economic growth and progress, are we in a state of free fall? What exactly is happening in your opinion?
In a state of complete collapse. Because A, there is no development, B, there is no investment, See, there is no planning. It is absolute chaos, because essentially we have a Prime Minister who has spent every moment from the date he became Prime Minister working out how to stay on as Prime Minister. Shamir may scream at me, but you remember here, Malinda Senaviratne said very clearly once, confirmed, that from January to April 2015, he said I was the only minister who was doing any work. And the reason for that, and he confirmed it here, is that from day one, Ranil Wickremesinghe was plotting to stay in office. Take the Constitution, you've heard some of it being read, it is a farrago of absolute nonsense, because it contains several different dispensations. Why? Because instead of having a new Constitution, as was promised, the President, and the President was a very weak man, he was also very terrified, he didn't know what had hit him when he became President, he handed over power to Ranil and Chandrika, thinking they were experts. I still remember on the first day, I was screaming with embarrassment, as you know, I came out in his favour, and I still think on balance it was the right decision. But I never expected Maithripala Sirisena to go into Ranil Wickremesinghe's office and say, I will continue to call you sir. But oh my God, what's happened? But still I think he's an honest man, he's a decent man, floundering, but he was trying to do the right thing. And he handed over to Ranil. Ranil handed over Jayampati Wickremaratne. Jayampati Wickremaratne's sole purpose in life was to change the Constitution to say President shall always act on the advice of the Prime Minister. He said this very clearly. And when he wanted to put it in the manifesto and I protested, he said, and I protested on two grounds. I said, one, it is wrong to tell people to vote for A to give power to B. Second, I said, you're handing the election to Mahinda Rajapaksa on the platter because there's nothing Mahinda wants more than to run against Ranil, because he'll thrash him. And Jayampati said to me, one day later, you're right, but we'll do it afterwards. I fought tooth and nail to stop it. I wasn't invited, but when Maithripala Sirisena had a meeting on the committee, I pointed this out. In fact, Champika Ranawaka, who should have been talking, he came to me and said, Hariyodata Katha Kala. Because we stopped Jayampati doing that. But then when the compromise was given, you have this farrago of nonsense. You have this business about on one thing he acts on the advice of the Prime Minister, on the other he has to consult him. Ranil cut out the bit about the President sacking him. But it is very clear that the country has lost confidence in the Prime Minister, and I hope Parliament reiterates that. But then, as Krishmal said, the state continues. The President was elected for 6, now 5 years.
By direct vote by us.
And he has the right to stay there until he's got rid of. It is his responsibility to find a Prime Minister who commands the confidence of the country.
Professor, when you say a farrago of nonsense, are you referring to the 19th Amendment?
Yes.
Did you also not vote for the 19th Amendment?
I did, because I thought it was better than what happened previously. But if you look at Hansard, look at the number of amendments I drafted, including this rubbish about this national government. I said, we had promised to have 30 ministers, I think. And I said, you can't put this in. And in fact, the JO has a lot to answer for, because when the Jayampati put in this temporary provision, Dinesh said, so even after the next election, some clown can say, I'm a national government. So, if you look at those amendments, and I wish people did, a lot of them I did. In fact, I told the SLFP General Secretary, why have you kept this about on the advice of the Prime Minister? And Anna Priyadarshana at the time said to me, so they didn't change it. And you look at Hansard, 20 amendments. And of course, everyone was screaming at me on both sides because none of them had read the amendments. They wanted them cut out. But you look at my amendments in Hansard, they're all there, and I'm proud of that fact.
Dr.
May I have 30
yeah.
seconds to clarify why some of those confusions came into this 19th Amendment. Remember the draft that we took to the Supreme Court, the draft had the Prime Minister as the head of the cabinet. They wanted to change, the draft wanted to change the President's powers over the cabinet to the Prime Minister. And to coincide with that, we changed several other provisions giving the Prime Minister power. But the Supreme Court said, no. People have given executive power to a President by direct vote. You can't then give those powers to a Prime Minister who has come through the legislature. And that is why we had to bring all this consultation, asking the Prime Minister, because we had to find a via medium. That's why some of these confusion.
No, but the basic problem is, in consultation is acceptable.
Yes.
Because it means you consult.
Having
on the advice of gives this man a job, and you all have the point is it's chaotic. One says consultation, other says advice. So it is a farrago of nonsense, and I stand by that.
I'd like to bring this back to the no confidence motion, because the debate on the 19th Amendment is a long one.
Too late to do that now.
Dr. Mahana Maheva, I'd like to come to you. I tend to agree with you somewhat in your opening remarks. You said about responsibilities being accepted by all of those in government. Do you agree with Mr. Varnasuriya's position on this being a no confidence motion solely against the Prime Minister and not the government as a whole?
I didn't say that. I said the word government is used in the no confidence motion.
Okay. Given that the word government is used, I'll rephrase that. I'm sorry, Mr. Varnasuriya, but given that the word government is used in the no confidence motion, should the public be seeing this as a no confidence motion in just the Prime Minister, or the entire government, including the SLFP faction of the government as well?
I think parliamentarian Ashu Marasinghe, he had a press conference. In that press conference, he specifically said the stand of United National Party. This non-confident motion is illegal. This is not my word, his word. And Vajrabhayawardena, Minister also said this non-confident motion is against the constitution. That's how they touted to general public. Is it? Wait, I'll explain. My personal analysis, I don't know the argument. So why they want to try to do it, basically?
No, but that was rebutted, that point was rebutted by Sarat Amrugama and
yeah, that's what I'm going to tell you. The main argument there, what they say, against the Prime Minister, you can't come up a non-confident motion. It has to be based with the government and the full cabinet ministers. So that was their argument. But I feel, basically, even this non-confident motion, where the other parties are standing, how they see this non-confident motion, and the argument raised by Krishmal Varnasuriya, and also the question asked in Japan, what is happening, they clearly explain. So my argument is this: even the Prime Minister will see. Now, to defeat the non-confident motion, you don't need 113 votes. The basic thing you need, if that day, if people present, parliament members present 30, you need 16 only. Yeah. So I have my serious doubt whether the full parliamentarian will come or not. We have a lot of experience. Francisco Karane a long time back. And you can hijack parliament members. You mentioned some people, I don't know whether they will hijack them also. Yeah, it's a tendency of that. So that's why Mr. Vikramasinghe is a very smart person who knows how to escape with this. They are trying how to escape with that.
But Dr. Mahana, absenteeism and abstentions won't help the cause of Ranil Vikramasinghe.
Yeah, I don't know how may it work. Yeah. But people having confidence both sides. But my main argument is this. Now there is a tug of war. We can see Prime Minister and President, even their friendly work. You know, this termination or even getting back the Economic Council. And even be specifically said, but even the gazette issued, but still nothing happening. So there are actually, who is the leader? That's the biggest problem.
But isn't the president really showing his might right now, saying, don't mess around with me.
Now we are the sword,
a national
where's the
economic council now.
A lot of things said, but the issue is this: president also will remain 1.5 years, another 1.5 years. Thereafter, he must see in the future. Those who are getting rally around him, definitely they must win the next election.
I want to come to Professor Rajiv Vijay Singh now, who is a former member of Parliament. We saw in 2011 the Leadership Council within the UNP, which was brought forward, and the restructuring of the UNP that was proposed by the Leadership Council, the measures that should have been taken at that time. You see a similar gimmick, if I may put it that way, taking place right now within the UNP at present. You see several factions meeting the Prime Minister at different intervals, individuals expressing their views at different intervals after meeting the Prime Minister. Given what happened in 2011, do you think that the Prime Minister is genuine about the leadership of the party being handed over to someone else?
Don't be silly. I mean, if you think the Prime Minister is genuine about anything, you've learned nothing. The Prime Minister is an absolute crook. He's a very divisive crook. He loves to divide. You know, even when he consults the party at the ministers, first and then deputy ministers, Then he managed to suborn people like Harsha, who spoke the truth once. But the interesting thing is what I call the backbone of the UNP. People whom no one doubts are UNP people, who haven't said a word. Ranjit Madhuma Bandara, Thalatatu Korala, Chandranik Bandara. There are a lot of people there who are not getting into this game of these callow young things who are screaming and shouting and telling lies. You know, Ajit Pereira just announced the other day that in fact the Prime Minister had wanted all these things taken away from him. You know, the first Turkey who has voted for Christmas. But in actual fact, the silly people are shouting, but the core of the UMP is keeping quiet, and people like Ranga Bandara are saying very clearly, if you are going to tell us that we should vote against this motion because you are restructuring, you know you are a liar, do it before the 4th. And of course that's not going to happen. Ranga Bandara and I think Sena Singha had said do the restructuring before the 4th. So they know their man backwards. After all, they've had 23 years to know him. He is the man who introduced into the constitution of the UNP, soon after Gamini Dissanayake was assassinated and the secretary of the party went and he put in his own man whom he thought was he could depend on, and later he didn't trust him also, Gamini Korala. He changed the constitution to say exactly what this says: you can't lose office ever unless you resign. So I think the UNP knows him well enough.
Professor Sujiva Senasinghe on this very show last week said that he will take a very strong decision when the no confidence motion is tabled in Parliament. Do you think, given the history of parliamentarian Sujiva Senasinghe, who is now a state minister, he would be voting for the no confidence motion with individuals like Vasanta Senanayake?
I have no idea, but don't talk to Sujiva Senasinghe and Vasanta Senanayake in the same breath. Sujiva Senasinghe, as you know, played hell over the bond scam, having first told me that he said, don't blame Ravi Karunayaka, it's not him, it's someone higher up who did it. Then, of course, he and Rosie, we were told by other people in the UNP, were suborned by Ranil to try to sabotage the first scope. We know all that. So Sujiva, I think, will go whichever way the wind blows, and I think it's a great insult to someone like Vasanta Senanayake, who has stood absolutely clear on his principles from the start and spoken out openly. First to Mahinda Rajapaksa, and now with regard to the present government, I don't think they're in the same league, but Sujiva may well realize, my God, I'm a young man, I have a future. I can't go down with this Jonah.
Professor Vijay Singh, now the no confidence motion is taking shape in the backdrop of delayed local government formations, right? We hear a lot of secret meetings and alleged offerings of bribes to secure allegiance. Is there a role for the bribery commission in this regard?
There's a massive role, but as you know, I've complained to the bribery commission about 2 actions of Ranil Wickremesinghe bribing people to come over. First, to bring down Chandra Kumar Tunga's government. I sent a complaint on the basis of what Nahil Vijayasuriya told me. Ranil Wickremesinghe got checks for 60 million to bring people over to bring down her government. And then, of course, recently I told the Rauf Hakim story. I've reported, I'm not saying he's the only one, I'm sure other people are doing it. But I know that this had been a tradition in the UNP. Ranil's father used to boast about how he bribed people to bring down Mrs. Bandaranaike's government in 1964. Including, they pointed out, the house given to Edwin Tilakaratna of Ratkama. So Ranil is used to this sort of thing. The only difference is that unlike his father, who was a very honest crook, meaning he never made money for himself, he would bribe, Ranil gets other people to do it for him. So although he spoke direct to Rauf.
I can tell by the grin on Mr. Varnasuriya's face that this evidence is not admissible in court.
Paradox that the good professor
the evidence is not
would have loved to
admissible in
teach
court.
us.
But Mr. Varnasuriya,
Because he never lied about what he did. Ranil is a slimy creature,
Mr.
quite unlike his
do
father.
you think that there's it's likely that bribes would be offered to buy...
Everyone's speaking about it, no, Charita, and unfortunately, this is why I ask the people to consider it. Our politics have shrunk that low where there is no gentleman nor lady politics anymore. No, you do politics to gain money and quick money. Because the wrong people have been elected into public office, they want to be seen to be rich and moving in the high circles. I don't mean to sound elitist at all, please don't get me wrong. Because of the lack of grooming, the lack of breeding in those old-time politicians, Pratibha, that we have read about, Professor, and spoken about, that honesty, integrity, ethics, these are lacking. So I always say the people get the leaders they deserve. You have placed these people in office and they will fall for money.
No, but I must say that's a very unfair thing to say because the biggest scoundrels are the royalists. So please don't bring this talk about breeding and good breeding.
Right,
I have much greater faith in the
stop at
integrity
that.
of some of the poor people.
We need to stop at
do
that.
not want to depend every royalist into that is very unfair.
That I agree.
Maybe one or two
That I
royalists
agree,
may
but
do
I
it
was
if
only
you put
objecting
all
to
the
his
royalists
point.
into one bag.
Because Dr. Mahalanam is also royalist, I think.
No, I was only objecting to his
the other
point.
one.
I'm not objecting to, I quite agree with you.
Yeah, okay, so we're going for a short commercial
But
break,
name
but I
one.
need to mention here at the outset, before we go for a short commercial break, that the individuals who are making their remarks in the panel will have to take responsibility, full responsibility for the statements they're making, and as a network we will not take responsibility for the statements that are made by the panelists. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's Face the Nation. We're talking about the no confidence motion that is going to be tabled in Parliament on Wednesday, the 4th of April 2018. What will happen next? All that and more after the short commercial break. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I start off the third round with Dr. Pratibha Mahanamheva, one-time commissioner of the Sri Lanka Human Rights Commission of the country. He's also an attorney at law. Dr. Mahanamheva, interestingly, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party is now holding talks with the Prime Minister. We saw that even happening today. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe going to the Paget Road residence of the President and meeting the President on the no confidence motion. We are not yet sure what the discussion was or how what transpired after the discussion. It is not yet clear. However, we see several other members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party like Honorable Priyadarshana Yapa, SP Sanayaka, very openly coming and saying we will support the no confidence motion which is happening in Parliament on the 4th. If that is the case, why all these meetings?
These meetings are there because there is a risk in this no confident motion. Because many SLFP ministers, they have seen today the merits, whatever the points in the non-confident motion is where long time people are waiting. So that's why they are openly saying. I have another issue with this. 5 SLFP ministers or cabinet ministers, 2 or 3 signed. How can they remain in this government? If they have signed against the Prime Minister, they should have resigned. But still they are in the government, they are holding these portfolios and they are getting all the benefits. So this is where still no one having a confidence which party is going to win. All these senior members of SLFP, they are waiting for 2020 election. When they face for 2020 election, they know definitely they will come for the 3rd place or 4th place. Now better they back for the former president. That's why they are actually making certain statements like that. That is my personal view. One part of SLFP, definitely they will join with the United National Party for the next election. So this time, if you are putting this, now see how long we drag.
So without even a proper leadership within the UNP at present, you are saying that several members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party may join the UNP at the 2020 election?
I think still the United National Party leadership is there. No? You can remember sometimes back, there was a great threat for Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. And that time,
you said one point that Ranil Wickremesinghe is not the leader who can steer the country towards victory, and then you say that
no, I am
SLFP
saying still
would join the UNP.
One leader is there. No? They think he is the winning person. So that is.
Is there any alternative for Ranil Wickremesinghe at present?
For my argument, there should be a young leader who can take the party leadership and run. But here,
who is it? Is there anyone?
I can't say because I am not in those parties. I am not doing politics. So you have to decide who will be the next party. Their, executive committees can decide it. But my major argument is still this: United National Party constitution is very powerful. With that constitution, changing leaders are not easy because where the executive committee members met and they have decided to support Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. So changing people, now down level we have seen rallies are coming up, even all these Pradesh Sabha members, provincial council members, one slogan, he must step down. But still he is not listening to that because the constitution protects him, United National Party.
How far is the United National Party united at present on the no confidence motion?
Yes, as it is you can say they are united, but there are so many fractions. They are openly not coming. Why this non-confidence motion they can go for electronic vote or secret vote. Why? What is the reason of having the public vote? So that's why people are threatened. Even United National Party today issued a statement, 3-line, if anyone going to vote actually for the non-confidence motion, disciplinary action taken. So they are threatening their members. No independency. No, basically these are all impartiality is not there. So is that the good governance? According to your concerns, can't you take a decision? No, you can't. So that's why the party policy. But Sri Lanka Freedom Party, other than that I have seen, still they have not taken a firm decision, but indirectly they are saying this non-confident motion we are going to support. That is the reality in the country.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pratibha Mahanamheva. I now move my attention to Professor Rajiv Vijay Singh. However, I just got a message from one of our panelists, that is Shamindra Ferdinand, stating that he thinks that Ranil Wickremesinghe would survive the no-confidence motion that would take place on Wednesday, and he says that the only thing that would happen is that there would be further divisions within the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. I want to throw this question back to you, Professor. Do you think that if Ranil Wickremesinghe survives the no-confidence motion that happens on Wednesday, that would there be further divisions within the Sri Lanka Freedom Party itself, and would that mean the President would lose further grip?
Well, I think certainly what has appeared from the number of senior Sri Lanka Freedom Party people there is they have no confidence in it at all. And in essence, it would mean the end of this government as we see it now. But if he survives, they may want to stick on in office and not go to the other side, thinking that, you know, another 16 months of enjoying perks will be better than being in opposition. But conversely, they may well think that, you know, they can stay in office but continue to make clear criticisms of the mess the country is in. I think what will happen is, even if Ranil survives, President Sirisena will have to take a very, very tough decision, which is to say, right, I am going to reshuffle the cabinet, which he can do, because there is a clause that says he can reassign ministries not on the advice of the Prime Minister, and just say, right, Ranil, you can be Prime Minister, and we can also, if you like, make you Minister of Wildlife. And we'll give all the decision-making ministries to be intelligent, capable people, including good people in the UNP. I think the President showed his mettle by appointing Ranjit Madhuma Bandara. There are those who say that Ranil had heard Madhuma Bandara was the alternative choice and he quickly bribed him with this law and order. But I think it's the other way around, that he wanted Sarath Fonseca, because he wanted to persecute the Rajapaksas even more. And the President realized that I had better put a strong, capable person in there. And I think if Ranil loses, while I think the best thing for the country would probably be a year with Karu Jayasuriya as Prime Minister, because he has no further ambitions, he will not come into Parliament again, and he might then fulfill the promises of the 215 manifesto.
But in the great point we heard, the Professor, that the President had requested Speaker Karu Jayasuriya to take over the premiership, and Speaker Karu Jayasuriya in return had tried to mediate the two and to get into a settlement after the 10th February local government defeat for the Sri Lanka Freedom Party as well as the UNP. So it is very clear that Karu Jayasuriya is not the
Karu has a little hang-up where he thinks loyalty means loyalty to the party, but loyalty means loyalty to the country. And when clearly the country had told Ranil, for God's sake, go, I think Karu should have actually thought about his loyalty to the country. But in a sense, let us say that he did a rather foolish but naively loyal thing and destroyed the country in favor of Ranil. If the no confidence motion passes, then he has to take it, because obviously there is a vacancy. So therefore I hope he'll accept it, and I think he'll also make it clear that this is only going to be for 12 months. He will put through all the reforms that were pledged in President Sirisena's manifesto of 2015. I still remember, you know, he was made Minister for Democratic Governance, and I actually spoke to him and he pointed me to help him, advise him with a committee on certain things. But then he told me, I can do nothing, you know, this man doesn't trust me. Because you see, Ranil at that stage was not letting Karu work. So I think Karu would be the ideal, but if he won't take it up, Ranjit Madhuma Bandara would be the obvious choice, and thank God he's not from Royal.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Rajiv Vijay Singh. You need to be very selective of your words. We have a royalist in the studio, that's Dr. Mahanamheva. So you need to, you can't.
Sort of royalist. He's
you
a
can't
good
generalize the
royalist.
royalists, so we need to be very careful in selecting words. However, you can say whatever you want, and you take full responsibility for the statements you make. Now I move my attention to Krishmal Varnasuri, attorney at law. Krishmal, interestingly, looking at the history of the UNP, let's just rewind ourselves for the last 6 years, last 8 years or so. 2010 elections, we saw then General Sarath Fonseca contesting the presidential election. Because Ranil Wickremesinghe knew that he is going to be defeated at the election, he did not contest. He chose to go with a common candidate. 2015 presidential elections, he thought he is going to lose again, and hence he brought in Maithripala Sirisena. And because of the campaign that was undertaken by individuals like Professor Rajiv Jayasinghe, President Maithripala Sirisena emerged victorious at the 2015 election. But given the history of Ranil Wickremesinghe, an individual who does not want to be defeated, do you think that he would even go for the vote on Wednesday if he knows he's going to lose the battle? Is he an individual of that caliber? Or would he resign even tomorrow? Is that something that we can expect? Would he contest, or would he go for the vote, and would he sit down thinking, okay, I'm going to lose this election, and hence anyway we'll just go ahead? Or what's going to happen next now?
Yeah, moving into the realm of speculation, but obviously calculated speculation based on our knowledge of the science of politics and how people have behaved in the past, what we call idiosyncratic variables. I personally do not think that Premier Wickremesinghe will risk a vote because, as you correctly have analysed him, I don't think he is a man who's used to losing in the public eye. And if at all by tomorrow night, perhaps even just before a vote is taken, if he is almost certain that he is going to pull through and win it, he might go for that vote. But if not, I have the strongest disbelief that he will risk facing an election, an actual election. Having said that, can I just, now that we are in the realm of speculation, speculate as to one or two things that may happen on the 4th. Now, what happens if the SLFP ministers in the present cabinet and the members, of which the party of which His Excellency the President is the chairman of, the SLFP, vote with the no confidence motion brought by the SLPF, the Podujana Pyramid. That's what they call it. The vote is called the SLPF, right? SLPF, yeah. So now, if they vote with that, Shamir, immediately they are making a statement that we no longer have confidence in a government that is led, the cabinet that is led by the present Honorable Premier Wickremesinghe, and therefore after that it will be very, very difficult, I would say impossible, if you take any conscience of a politician into play, even within this absolute nonsensical political scenario we have in Sri Lanka, to continue to sit in a cabinet afterwards if Premier Wickremesinghe pulls through the no confidence motion, and if they vote against him, it is going to be very difficult as for them to justify how am I going to continue to sit in a government that I have just said I have no confidence. Right? That's one of the things that may happen. Then, if the UNP wins it, meaning if Premier Wickremesinghe pulls through, I don't think they are also going to tolerate any of the SLFP ministers who sat with them in a cabinet, who voted against them, continuing to sit with them in government. And they are already saying, we want to clear this place up, and therefore we think 4th vote is very good. Right? Now, what is in this scenario, what is the political interest of the SLPF, the Podujana Front, led by the former President's Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa, and the present, the ones who garnered a majority at the last election? I also don't think, politically thinking, they want Ranil Wickremesinghe Premier to be defeated in this no confidence motion. In their political interest, it is better for Premier Wickremesinghe to pull through and win this, because that would create all that disarray in the SLFP, which is what they want for the next presidential election. Because the next presidential election, like Professor Vijayasinghe said, they would like nothing better than to run against a weakened Premier Wickremesinghe. Fourthly, if what I said first, my first speculation happens, and if this no confidence motion is won, Meaning if Premier Wickremesinghe pulls through and the UNP, then obviously they lose the national government because there is no more national government. The SLFP people will leave, and then the UNP have to be limited to 30 members of the cabinet in terms of 19th Amendment. In such a scenario, don't forget the Constitution requires His Excellency the President to be head of the cabinet. So His Excellency the President, the present chairperson of the SLFP, will have to sit with 30 UNP members and run the cabinet for the next 1.5 years.
Thank you very much. Krishmal Varnasuri, attorney at law. I open the floor for questions from our journalists, but before that, I have a very quick question to Krishmal Varnasuri, attorney at law. Krishmal, let's say, I'm speculating here hypothetically, let's say Ranil Wickremesinghe loses the no confidence motion that is going to be tabled on Wednesday. The President can appoint someone who he thinks commands the respect or commands the support of the majority or confidence of majority of the members of Parliament. And
there is no majority. Commands the confidence of Parliament.
Commands the confidence of Parliament. Let's say he appoints an individual. Let's say someone within the UNP says, okay, go for a vote and see whether he has a confidence or he has a majority. Can that happen?
There is no requirement for him to do that. It is purely within the realms of speculation of His Excellency the President. It's his prerogative. In his opinion, who he thinks, that may we use a little test of Wensbury test of reasonableness that we use in law. It may very well be, he may say, I think a person with red hair will command the confidence of Parliament. He may think so.
That
and
is
the confidence,
based,
the Constitution
based
allows.
on the 19th Amendment of the Constitution.
No, it was there in Jay's Constitution.
The Constitution,
in his opinion,
that was before, had the same prerogative on the President. It is who the President considers in his opinion. No one else needs to even advise him. In his opinion, who he thinks commands the confidence of Parliament.
Thank you very much. So I open the floor for questions from my journalists. So let's start off with Nadev.
Thanks. Professor Vijay Singh, I want to come to you because when you see where we are at today and you think back 3 years ago to the energy that we saw from you, from activists like Mr. Varnasuri, Dr. Devasri, who's also part of your People's Intellectual Assembly, in that 8th January movement, and you see where we are now. Do you think that the good governance experiment has failed? Do you think it is doomed to fail from the start when MP who only had from his party 50 seats in Parliament was made Prime Minister in spite of it being as Mr. Varnasuri correctly pointed out, an election for the executive office?
I think the first mistake, I don't think it was wrong to make Ranil Wickremesinghe Prime Minister because that was pledged in the manifesto and he got a lot of UNP support. The mistake was to make him Prime Minister on that very day and actually do something completely wrong in that, Ranil was appointed without the previous person having been dismissed. And Ranil accepted that. And I still remember, I think I got in hot water because when this was mooted that morning by Ravi Karunayaka, I said, you can't do it. And Ranil said, he pretends to be asleep. When I said, you can't do it, there's nothing wrong with me being Prime Minister at the same time. So I said, but there is a Prime Minister. Then Ravi said, we will get Lalit Veeratunga to persuade him to resign. Before. And that should have happened. But when Ranil Wickremesinghe was appointed, there was a Prime Minister. Lalit tried to make it a bit more legal by getting the President, before he appointed Ranil, to sign a letter dismissing the Mujaratna. But since it hadn't been delivered, it wasn't really a letter. So Ranil took office when there was already a Prime Minister. So if tomorrow Maithripala Sirisena decides to appoint Karujasuri a Prime Minister, Ranil can't go screaming in court, I was Prime Minister. He can't do that.
But now the law has changed.
No.
Now the law has changed.
No, the law says you can't dismiss.
No. Earlier, he could, under a hand signature, he could remove it.
He could remove it.
Now he can't.
No, but last time also he hadn't done it.
Yeah, he hadn't done
That's
it.
the point I'm trying to make.
But
Anyway, the point is this,
the good
that it was
governance
supposed to be a
experiment
coalition government. But Sirisena made the mess of entrusting the cabinet to Ranil and Chandrika. And Chandrika wasn't interested in anything except the UNP. I mean, I know someone who spoke to her about joining the SFP afterwards. And she said, no, don't join the SFP. These fellows are all villagers, not like when I was the leader. This was another Colombo 7 person. You better join the UNP, you will be much happier there. So, she was already denigrating Sirisena from day one as part of this, let us say, this Royal Thomaian conspiracy. of
Professor, I'm
elitism.
glad that you're not a lawyer. You have a proclivity for hearsay.
Sorry?
You have a
This is not
affinity for
hearsay. Hearsay is what you hear, but I am saying what I told you.
What you are directing.
I believe what people say. I believe what people say. But having said that, I also believe that one of the biggest problems in this country, this came up earlier, is we think politics is about principles. Politics is about personalities in this country.
But
so once that was happened, then again, the second mess that happened is that when Sirisena tried to expand his cabinet, he took Chandrika's advice, and instead of appointing the senior SLFPs, he appointed all the ragtag and bobtail.
Professor,
So the result is that the SLFP feels alienated. And I think it was absolutely wrong. Sirisena's final big mistake was when he could have retrieved the situation by having a government headed by the SLFP under him. He played into Ranil's and Chandrika's hands by destroying the campaign of the SLFP in 2015 August.
Professor,
that was destroyed deliberately, giving Ranil this artificial majority.
Leave aside the politicians and the parties and the political power struggles. Consider the manifesto, the commitments that were made to the people for that 8th of January election. You were a contributor to that manifesto as well. There were provisions to strengthen the oversight functions of Parliament. The new constitution project, which also appears to be a dead fish right now. Has the good government experiment failed?
None of it was done. The first thing was changing standing orders. That wasn't done. Because I had a motion already there. It was taken up. Lakshman Kiral let me take it up. The standing orders committee met. Then Ranil stopped it because he said, no, I'm getting Priyani. What's the name of that woman? He said, Vijay Sekara. You know, that woman who thinks that legislation is formed by the executive. She actually wrote a book about Parliament in which she forgot that there are parliamentarians who are legislators. The book is Legislation is formed by the ministers and the legal draftsman's department. Anyway, that lady was told to draft something. She took 6 months. We couldn't change the standing orders. When we finally got agreement, Parliament was dissolved. The Right to Information Act was delayed. It was promised in a week. The Audit Act has still not come. The Constitutional Council that was meant to advise of all leaders was about 4 people. So nothing in the manifesto was done except the 19th Amendment, and even that was at half.
Mr. Varnasuriya, when you consider the fact that, as Professor Vijay Singh quite rightly points out, all of the commitments in the manifestos, all of the good governance commitments that actually would have established some measure of good governance in the country and increased accountability among the powerful, were conveniently forgotten about, like the audit bill, like the code of conduct for MPs, like the amending of the standing orders of Parliament. Anything that promotes accountability on their part has been conveniently forgotten. Is there any point really to continuing to speak up for the good governance government?
Absolutely. In fact, those days I loved to come to your station and other stations, and they called us to come and talk to the people about how to make a better country. Very quickly, Nadeem, I'm fast losing interest even in coming and talking like this, for the simple reason, why do you think the people in lock, stock and barrel in February this year voted, if you looked at that color of the map of the results that you all published on your stations, almost 3/4 of it was red. Why do you think they voted? Do you think they voted because they were in love with former President Rajapaksa? No. These are the people who came out with us, who risked police barrels, water cannon, tear gas canisters to change this country and the way this country was progressing. These are people who said no to dictatorships. These are people who said, no, we don't want chief justices being touched like this and removed from office just because they don't give judgments. These are people who said, we don't want 18 amendments that give presidential powers to run to your lifetime until your son is old enough to become president.
So then
wait,
why
let me finish. Let me finish. Now that you asked me this question, let me finish. And these are all people who were disgruntled, who came out, walked out with us, changed the government by pure people's power, and disappointed in over 3 years that, like you said, nothing had been done. That is why these people voted less, and that is why now they're trying to run around, trying to build these special procedures by amending the Judicature Act, and to bring special courts. What they want to punish all these people in 1.5 years. That's why they're trying to do it. If I said this at your station or some other station, if these people had not given that massive mandate to the party that had not been even formed under 1 year, none of these Judicature Act amendments would have come about. Now they are trying to do things.
So why are we talking only about the Prime Minister then? Shouldn't
Absolutely,
this be
that's why I started by saying we are wasting our time.
Isn't this, shouldn't we say, look, the public mandate has been lost, time to dissolve Parliament and call for fresh general elections?
No, but then there is a constitutional impediment. No, the Honourable His Excellency President can't dissolve Parliament until it runs its course of 4.5 years.
In hindsight, that specific clause in the section in the Constitution, in hindsight, do you think it was a good idea to have that there?
Hindsight is 2020. But Nadeem, having been involved in some of those committee discussions that Professor Vijay Singh was referring to in the constitutional amendment, and then having argued the 19th Amendment in the Supreme Court, I realize that now I realize most of these provisions have been put in thinking, very craftily thinking as to what was going to happen after the August election. You see, we brought this in around March or April, and they thought forward. I mean, we thought we were drafting a constitution, but they were drafting a relief mechanism in case they didn't get the majority that they wanted.
Dr. Pratibhamana Maheva, now in case the no confidence is defeated in Parliament, as much as it strengthens the Prime Minister, it will equally weaken the President, right? What are the options available for the President in such a scenario?
Yeah, now before that I just want to make some comments, just traced out. This is not only the 19th Amendment and any other thing, fertilizer issue was there. As well as people, they didn't have money to have their 3 meals. Grassroots level, everyone was suffering with many things, not only for tear gas and other things. Even President Mahinda Rajapaksa, former president, said, just vote for the snake, just vote for this bicycle. They voted. So people love him. Actually, if you go anywhere else...
Love him for the wrong reasons?
Not for the wrong reason. He has a charisma. He has the personality. People are not doing anything in this government. So people are rally around him. So he just said one symbol, people are voting.
No, but Dr.
So why
Manav,
people are voting? They don't vote for JVP.
Dr. Manav, then you are agreeing to Professor Rajiv Vijay Singh's thinking. He says
no,
it's all about personality and not policies.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I just want to say, people rejected him. No, today people think he is the survivor. So that's why whatever the symbol you name, people voted. That's why people looking that. Now you asked basically if Ranil Wickremesinghe defeated, I will tell what are the options available, and non-defeated also there are certain things. But I think my reading with the Constitution, most of the time in consultation with the Prime Minister. So therefore immediately, like the former Constitution, you can't just, send him to his normal seat. You need some type of consultation. Even appointing minister, this can be a big issue, chaos in the Parliament. My argument, even if Mr. Wickremesinghe wins, for the next 1.5 years, nothing will happen in the Parliament. Day by day, you can see people are crossing over, nothing, and development issues may come up. And also look here, there is an election coming very soon. Now people are not talking about this provincial council election. It has to come in this September, but nothing had done. Where the delineation...
May I agitate your constitutional mind to a question that you just said? Do you have permission to do that?
Yes.
You said in consultation with the Prime Minister, you appoint ministers. Imagine this situation. No confidence motion is passed. This Prime Minister is dismissed with the cabinet. Right? Then the President has to appoint a new cabinet. Then the President has to only consult that new Prime Minister to appoint ministers, not the old Prime Minister. You follow my meaning?
But there is an issue. There is a real issue. Now, even I think that's why he may not step down. Even Ranil Wickremesinghe lost this. He say, no, I still have the confidence and I still have the power. How can you remove him? How can
he say he has confidence when he has lost no confidence?
He can be there.
So, Krishmal,
that's my argument.
Now, Krishmal.
Theoretical, wait 1 minute. Yeah. Theoretical it is correct. But practically what will happen?
Now
you have to postpone the Parliament session
day by day. Brings a very good point here.
He says he will get some of the people to his side later, even after the no confidence motion.
Can I point out?
Yes, please.
No, it's very, very obvious to me. Because the Constitution is a farrago, the President has every right to pick the clauses that will suit him. So I think what the President should have done was gone by the clause that Krishmal cited. If the position is vacant by resignation, death or otherwise. And say otherwise means I deem him to have lost the confidence of the House. Because don't forget that stupid clause, the Liberal Party actually questioned this in the 80s. The President shall appoint the person who commands the confidence of the House is the way any other country has it. Sri Lanka only specifically says in his opinion.
In his opinion.
So therefore the President can say, in my opinion, there is no confidence. But let's say that is debatable. Once he has lost the motion, the President
goes out.
The otherwise clause has to be implemented.
And that's a constitutional. There is no question.
Has to be implemented.
42, 48,
so if he loses the clause, there is
48 one
no
is
question.
no sooner you lose the vote of no confidence, the cabinet is this.
That goes. So I don't think
and
that is the problem.
Dissolved, the baby goes out in the water.
The problem, as Pratibha said, is
that is not practically easy as you say. We can see the black and letter words and we can interpret that. But still,
but once he sacks him, he can go to court. Once he sacks him, he can go to court. That's a separate issue.
So
then they can go on for ages while the new Prime Minister...
You can't go to court on parliamentary.
But still the problem is
you can't go and challenge legislative issues in court.
Anyway, the point is, I think if he loses, there's no question about what will happen.
Yeah, he'll have
I think still there's a question. Even he loses, there is a question.
But if he wins, then of course there will be great chaos, because as you said, more and more people will drift away. Some of the people who vote for can't be in the cabinet. And very
but still they are in the cabinet. No, they have signed this non-confident motion. Why they are sitting in the cabinet?
Deputy. No one in the cabinet has signed.
Why not? TB Ekanayak is there.
Deputy.
Deputy, no.
People have signed. No,
but not in the cabinet, Pratibha, be precise. So anyway, if the people who vote for will obviously have to step down, but then again the President can exercise this right. So I think it will be very interesting afterwards. But I also think the UNP will then say enough is enough, just go. And this promise that he's made for April 5th will have to be implemented.
Mr. Varnasurya, what do you think the stand of the Tamil political parties would be?
A very important question, Charita. We addressed this, Nirmala and I had a press conference this morning, we addressed the same point. Now, the politics that we have learned is the duty of opposition. In Sinhalese related, in Sinhalese in university, Vipakse Karya Bhare. The main duty of an opposition is to make sure that they have an alternate policy to a government. And we say in old Westminster terms, we say an opposition, a good opposition must breathe down the neck of a government, saying that any moment you fall, I am ready to form a government. Now, I see a very funny situation in our parliament where there are more people in one opposition group, but they are not the main opposition in parliament. There are 13 or 14 people who are saying they are the opposition in parliament. Now, I would like to see the opposition actually doing their duty now. If the duty of opposition is actually to have a shadow cabinet, a alternate policy, to say everything that the government is doing, we have a better way to do it. I haven't seen this main opposition doing it over the last 2.5 years, except for limiting themselves to the national issue and the northeastern problem, right? Other than that, now I'd like to see how this so-called main opposition will behave in this no confidence motion. Can the main opposition, within that old parameters of Westminster politics that we have learned, say no, we have confidence in the government? I'd like to hear them say that. And then the people in this country will realize what a ridiculous mess we are in. And if you all remember, 2.5 years ago, I came to the same forum and said, this is like we all holding hands and saying the more we are together, the merrier will be. We have all given little posts in parliament to this and that and this party and that party. And we are trying to, showing the people we are running a government and a parliament when we are really not. Because it's ridiculous.
Professor Vijay Singha, in light of the current political situation, if we move forward towards policy, now world leaders have endorsed the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030. Sri Lanka has also given certain undertakings to implement these at national level. We're talking about economic development, social inclusion, environmental sustainability. So this means that Sri Lanka has to prepare a holistic policy document which has to be done in consultation with the various stakeholders, after which an implementation strategy has to be done and things have to be actually implemented. So the President launched it this year. So my question to you is, how practical do you think will be the implementation of this, given the fact that Sri Lanka doesn't really fare too well with regard to implementation of policies?
Well, frankly, I don't think the people in power care. You forget that one of the most important aspects in the President's manifesto was a limited cabinet scientifically devised. Now, if you take the most important areas for the developmental goals, you can't think of a bigger bunch of clowns in charge. Education. Duminda, what's his name? Akila Viraj Karyavasam. Agriculture, Duminda Disanayaka. Industries, Rishad Patyudi. Where are we going? I mean, these are vital portfolios. And you know, Ranil just puts a complete bunch of clowns in charge. In fact, each of them is a different clown from a different perspective. One UNP, one SLFP, and one the All Ceylon Muslim Congress. And we expect to have development. Then you have this cluster of economic ministries all falling over each other and then playing musical chairs when the need arises. You know, state enterprises and investment and this thing and that thing. None of them even talk to each other. There is no coordination. And we are talking of progress. I mean, it's a complete joke. You know, in the past government, I remember some of the SLFP ministers very upset because Basil was usurping all their functions. But Basil at least was efficient. Ranil Wickremesinghe usurps everyone's functions. Now Sirisena has taken half of them back. But he didn't do anything. He would have these mad committees headed by octogenarians, none of whom knew anyone in the administrative service. And they kept meeting and, you know, not getting anywhere. So the president's idea of grip and goes, I think that was the underhand one about the president traveling all over the world, as you put it. But frankly, I don't think anything comes out of these visits.
So this coalition government is ill-equipped, is it? Is that what you're saying?
Ill-equipped? It's not equipped at all. There are about 6 ministers of intelligence and capacity in the government. Most of them are underused. You know, Mahinda Samarasinha, who actually understands his brief, was doing vocational training. Poor man had to go off to shipping, where Malik Samarwika does everything without telling him. And you don't have any conceptual input now into that vital area. The president does it all. He kept youth affairs under himself, you know, all those poor youths. But now they had been transferred to Sagala. Poor Niroshan Pereira is still there doing nothing. I mean, it is the most unscientific cabinet ever.
Dr. Manamaheva, now I want to take a cue from Sonali's question about implementation and about the policies and the drafts that were brought in with much pomp and ceremony by the present regime under the patronage of President Sirisena as well as Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. So if the no confidence motion in Parliament is defeated, what's going to happen to all these policies? 2025 policy that was brought in, 2040 policies that were brought in, the vision for Sri Lanka policy that was brought in. What's going to happen to all these policies that was brought forward by these two members?
Now let's see in this angle, joint opposition has already raised, even this is defeated, they are not going to take any ministerial portfolio.
That's very cunning, isn't it?
Let me explain. That is your interpretation, my interpretation is...
No, I'm saying, isn't it cunning?
That's right. So, both have the freedom of expression. You can say your things, I can also say. In your time you say that, right? So, this is the argument. Let's analyze in such a way, right? So, joint opposition say they are not going to take any portfolios. So, former SLFP government, so they will support. Let's see that scenario number one. If it is come to work, whatever the policies, whatever the programs, where they want to continue, they can go ahead with that. But on the other side, if Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe wins, what will happen? All the SLFP members, those who are voted, they have to go against that. Then once again, you have to form other capitalist policies as well as you can sell the part of the country very easily because they are running the government at that. From beginning, what they have done, even when they formed sometimes back, COPE and other things, they have done it. So, they will get a very good chance. Even, you know, there is a big issue with funds in Sri Lanka. Whether you are collecting in, whether the other, Mr. Ravi Karunanayaka's statement, you read it today. Are we running, are we already acting according to the IMF slogans? So, I think this government still has not maintained any policy, whatever the policies they are maintaining for their survival only, even in future.
President Sirisena on a number of occasions said that there will be a breakthrough in the investigations of many incidents that took place during the previous regime. One incident that has transpired now is the MIG deal that happened in 2006, and Udayanga Weeratunga is arrested or not arrested is not yet clear. However, one thing is sure, that he's being held by the officials in Dubai at present. So, given the fact, in the event, hypothetically, if the no confidence motion is defeated, what's going to happen to all these investigations and the breakthroughs that happened over the last few years that people voted for?
Even non-confidence motion defeated, or even non-confidence motion won, nothing will happen to the due process of these things. That is where the good governance policies must run. Whatever the investigation started, change of a government, you can't stop. But it may happen. But my argument, it should not be like that. Whatever the investigation. Now let's see, no one is talking about this Mahindran case, whether he was arrested. You are talking about Uday Veeratunga. Same, another person is there. His friend is Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. Why can't he call to Sri Lanka? So these things are easily you could have done. You could easily escape with this. Now they say when the special high court is set up, the first case is bond scam case. Even bond scam case, now the UNP is saying you can't take this commission evidence. So there are a lot of variations. So my argument, the same system will run, everyone working for the survival. They want to wait 5 years and they want to get the pension, easy pension, that's all.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts in the first, second and third and fourth rounds. We're now going for a short commercial break. I need to remind our viewers once again that the panelists tonight will take responsibility for the statements they make, and we as a network will not take responsibility for the statements that are expressed by these members at present. So we're going for a short commercial break. When we come back as the final round, stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back.